I'm here to demonstrate the cleaning process for semi-critical medical instruments. These instruments are classified as coming in contact with intact mucous membranes and non-intact skin. The minimum level of cleaning required for these is high disinfection. The items I'm cleaning today are the Vienna retracting speculum, the Luque bayonet forceps, and my ophthalmoscope. I am going to verbalize what I cannot fit into 10 minutes. The cleaning room setup should be so that you can move from station to station in one direction. I am moving from my left to my right, starting with the pre-soak of soiled instruments and ending with the drying area after autoclave sterilization. The other thing is nothing should be stored under the sink or out on the counters. The room temperature should be between 18 and 23 degrees Celsius and 30 to 60% humidity. There always has to be a designated hand washing station within the cleaning room. If there is no room for that, then you at minimum have to have a hand sanitization station. I'm now going to gather the PPE I require for cleaning. I'm going to wash and dry my hands according to medical asepsis standards. And now I'm going to don my PPE. I am wearing a disposable, non-moisture penetrating gown. The opening is in the back so that my clothes and exposed skin are completely covered. I will tie at the neck and then tie at the waist. I'm going to put on my disposable mask and my reusable goggles. This is protecting my face from any splashes. I can also use a face shield instead. And then I'm going to don my disposable gloves. And they should go on and cover the cuffs of the gown so there is no exposed skin. I'm then going to put on my heavy-duty tear and chemical-resistant gloves that should cover the majority of my forearm. This is because we sometimes clean instruments with sharp edges and we want to maintain our safety to the best degree. I'm going to briefly talk about the ophthalmoscope, the disposable tip that was used to inspect inside a patient's nostril has already been disposed of in the biohazard waste bin in the examination room, and the ophthalmoscope cannot be submerged in any liquid, so I'm going to thoroughly clean it with disinfecting alcohol wipes, putting that in the biohazard bin, and then wiping with a damp cloth, putting that in the biohazard bin, and then completely drying with my new disposable paper towel, putting that away, and then putting this in its designated storage area, which should be labeled and behind a closed drawer or closed cupboard. The other soiled instruments are currently soaking in a pre-soak with an enzyme cleaner, and I followed manufacturer's instructions as to what that should look like. The instruments are completely submerged, and is to get the bigger bits of soiled contaminants off. So my sanitizing setup, I have NPH Cleanse Neutral Detergent and my disposable script brush. I've put enough warm water in the sink with my detergent to be able to completely submerge my instruments. But just before that, I'm going to take them out of the pre-soak one at a time and rinse them in cold water. The reason for this is we do not use hot water because it can actually adhere soiled contaminants to the surface of the instruments. Once I rinse them, I'm going to take my scrub brush and gently clean them, all surfaces, getting into all cracks and crevices, the lumens, the creases. underneath the surface of the water, again to not splash. I'm then going to, when I'm happy with how clean they are, I'm then going to take them out and rinse them under warm water, and then transfer them to a new paper towel to the right of the sink, taking another paper towel and covering them and patting them dry. The reason why it is very important that you do not go to the next step, which is disinfection. The instruments have to be dry because I just made up a disinfection solution set, and it is Metricide mixed with a ratio of water, and that ratio has to be exact to get the correct potency. To be sure that I have this, I've tested with Metricide test strips, and I do have the correct potency. So I've logged in the book that I've used the Metricide water ratio and that it's correct, date it and sign it, put that logbook away. At this point, I can dispose of my scrub brush in the biohazard waste bin. And now I'm going to transfer the dry instruments to the disinfecting solution, take the sealed lid off, and very carefully, without splashing or touching the disinfection solution, I'm going to place them in, seal that up, and let that soak in the sealed container for the manufacturer's recommended amount of time. You do not want to exceed this, especially don't leave them to soak overnight, because you could end up with a disinfection film on the surface of your instruments that you can't get rid of so easily. The solution should be changed at least once a day, and to dispose of it, you need to put it in a well-marked biohazard waste container that has a sealing cap, and that is set aside where our biohazard waste is stored until it can be picked up and disposed of correctly. At this point, I can sanitize my gloves and my goggles, rinsing thoroughly. And when I'm happy with that, I'm going to place them on a separate paper towel to the right of the sink, the gloves and the goggles, and take a second towel to pat dry. I can then put those in their designated storage spot. I am then going to remove the rest of my PPE, which is my disposable mask, my disposable gloves. I will make sure I do not touch the outer surface of those gloves. Turning them inside out, I will put them in the biohazard waste bin. Same with the gown. Untie it, and making sure I do not touch the outside of the gown. Disposing of it in the biohazard waste bin. I'm then going to wash and dry my hands according to medical ASEPSA standards, and then don a new pair of disposable gloves so I can sanitize the entire cleaning area, all surfaces including the sink, rinse, and then dry, and put all those towels in the biohazard waste bin. I can then remove those disposable gloves, turning inside out again, disposing of them in the biohazard waste bin, washing and drying my hands according to medical ASEPSA standards, and I will record in my logbook the items I've cleaned, the solutions I've used, and sign and date when I did this, and put the logbook away. Once the instruments are completely dry, I can then lubricate any moving parts with an appropriate lubricant, and I'm also going to inspect that they are in good working order and that there's no scratches or nicks on the instruments. Once that is done, I can then move to my next station, which is the wrapping area for autoclave sterilization. In a previous video, I showed you how to wrap these instruments properly. The only thing I can add to that is, if you're not going to sterilize them immediately, there should be a designated holding area for those packages to be sterilized by the autoclave. And that is the process for cleaning semi-critical instruments.